Welcome to Night's Arcade, I'm Sleepless Night, and today we're going to dive into the who's who and where's where of Kingdom Come Deliverance II. This is almost entirely speculation, by the way. Most of it is simply the product of several days spent scouring the internet and translating Czech and German text to find out what I wanted to find out. And in most cases I still didn't find definitive answers, so I did what most of us do when we get so close we can taste it, but no further. I guessed. Not very scientific, I know, but that's what a lot of this will be. Occasionally, there will be the odd thing in there on which I can speak with some authority, but even that is mostly guesswork based on personal experience. I have no insider information from Warhorse Studios regarding the things I'm about to talk about, and even people that I am in contact with who had something to do with the making of KCD2 would take their secrets to the grave before they'd tell me. So please be assured, this is almost entirely conjecture. However, in the unlikely event that any of this turns out to be correct, you should know that I intend to say I knew it all along, so I hope you'll point people here and say, SK told you so, if that should happen. I must also make a short apology for the sloppiness of this video. The speed with which it is necessary to get out speculation videos kind of completely rules out my usual fastidiousness when compiling and editing videos. I barely got my KCD2 announcement video out in time, and I had a week to do that, and it was still quite rough, so here we go. We know now that this game begins within days of the end of the last one. 3 days' ride to Trotsky Castle is mentioned by Radzig at the end of KCD, and it is apparently on the road to Trotsky that we will pick up our story. Henry and Hans are apparently ambushed on the way there, so the first sensible question would be, ambushed by whom? It's tempting to think that perhaps this scene represents the opening of the game, as we see Henry and Hans being met by emissaries of Otto von Berghoff, owner of Trotsky Castle and the very man we are travelling to meet. We can see that these are Berghoff's men because they're carrying and wearing Berghoff heraldry. But then what? I'd hardly call that an ambush, since it appears that Henry and Hans and co. are waiting for them there. Temporary imprisonment is a possible outcome of this meeting, since we see Hans releasing Henry from prison with a prison guard, again wearing Berghoff armour, but it's also possible this is just part of the new crime system, since we've also seen guards wearing that armour in other parts of the game, and the lands surrounding Trotsky Castle would surely be policed by Berghoff soldiers. We see Henry apparently fighting alongside someone wearing Berghoff armour in at least one scene, but then against them again in this one. At least one of the men on the other side of this drawbridge is wearing Berghoff armour, and it sure looks like a bad guy's attack sneakily in the middle of the night scene to me, but who knows what side we're supposed to be on in this scenario. It may be that some of your buddies have been dressing in Berghoff armour as part of some plan, or maybe they just like the colour, maybe it's just a lifestyle choice, I don't know. It may be that we aren't even playing as Henry for the entirety of this game, or it may simply be that Berghoff soldiers are on your side at some points in the game, but not others. A look at Czech history during this period gets really confusing, as the lines of allegiance get fuzzy really quickly. I mean, where is this guy's allegiance, for example? And why does Henry seem to be fighting against them here, but alongside them here? We'll come back to that in a few minutes, don't worry.
This is starting to make my head spin.
Let's not forget that the whole point of the mission you're sent on at the end of Kingdom Come Deliverance is to discover exactly what the current position of the League of Lords is by speaking with Berghoff at Trotsky Castle. So side-switching is what got us here in the first place. If you speak to Sir Radzig after the initial meeting with Margrave Jobst at the end of the last game, he talks to the point where it starts to sound like a Monty Python sketch about how even he can't keep up with the changing allegiances amongst the nobility, so that doesn't help much. But ambushing still seems more like something bandits would do, doesn't it? So let's look at this scene. This looks more like an ambush, and the few men shown display no heraldry of any kind that is discernible to a layman like myself, so who are they? This person here seems to be the one this shot is focusing on, and it's clearly the same man facing off against Henry in the field here. But then, it seems, at least going by what little clothing we can see, that this is once again the same person, Henry and Hans now apparently standing alongside him, wearing the same things they appear to be wearing here. But not the same clothing and armour as in this scene where they meet Berghoff's men. So firstly, which one of these cutscenes is the earliest in the timeline? And who the hell is this dude? It could be someone entirely unknown to history, or simply someone entirely unknown to me, which is much more likely. But is it possible this is Jan Žižka? Guerrilla fighter and Hussite mega hero whose success as a general is virtually unparalleled in world history, Žižka is rightfully, perhaps, the greatest hero of the Czech people. And there is nobody I can think of who would be a more popular addition to the cast of characters in KCD. He was definitely no friend to the League of Lords, especially Rosenberg, but someone as legendary as Žižka might take some of the limelight from our hero Henry, so my initial thought was, it's probably not him after all.
I hope you're right.
Yes, Jan Žižka is often depicted with facial hair that would make him a worthy adversary in the brutal underground sport of ultimate mustache, and his whereabouts during the time in which KCD begins are the subject of some debate. But he only had one eye for most of his life, and none at all by the end of it, though that didn't stop him from winning every single battle he ever fought. But hold on a second. This guy is only shown from one side. And, assuming we really can identify him as the same guy by the armour he wears, in every other instance we see him, he is shown wearing a helmet, notably with the visor down, as if to intentionally conceal from viewers of the reveal trailer some damaged part of the face that would all but give away his identity. But perhaps the most striking evidence, if you'll forgive the unintentional pun, is that in almost every single painting, statue, monument, or depiction of any kind that you can find of Jan Žižka, even the ones starring Michael Caine, he is carrying what has been described as his trademark weapon, a mace. A mace, in fact, almost exactly like the one that this same chap we've been talking about has conspicuously hanging by his side, even when he's wielding a sword. He was an outspoken opponent of Heinrich von Rosenberg and is mentioned by the Rosenbergs as an outlaw around 1406, so maybe we're seeing him at an early stage. Maybe Henry and Hans were travelling with a Rosenberg or Berghoff crew when they were ambushed by Žižka, or whoever this is, and assumed to be in allegiance with the League of Lords. Another bandit who ran with Žižka and was no fan of Rosenberg or the League of Lords was a man whose Czech name, if you'll forgive my Czech pronunciation, is Matej Vůdce, or the much less evocative Matthew the Leader in English. Both of these men ran with Radzig Kobyla and Jan Sokol, who is mentioned in the first game against the Rosenbergs. So maybe this could even be Sokol. My money's on Žižka, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. One character in the announcement about whose identity almost none of us have any reservations is this chap. This looks a great deal like our mercenary warrior priest and favourite drinking buddy from Kingdom Come Deliverance, Father Godwin. In the instances where this chap is clad in armour, there might be a little doubt, but the guy shown here and at the end of the trailer is either Father Godwin or an as yet unknown dude for which they used exactly the same character model since he looks absolutely identical. István Toth returns, of course, but if he's a real person from history, I haven't been able to find out, mainly because I recently read somewhere that in Hungary, being named István Toth is comparable to being named John Smith in England or in the US. This bloke is probably a Rosenberg. We all know murderer! This fella is presumably supposed to be Eric, Toth's alleged lover and bartered hostage from the first game, albeit with a slightly different head than he used to have. Accident with a razor, perhaps? Or maybe he just answered the phone while he was ironing. Who knows how these things happen? This bloke probably just misses his mum. This bloke looks like he's just really nervous about whether or not he's going to remember all the careful steps they taught him in lever pulling school. And that utterly flawless segue brings us to the subject of who, Or more precisely, where is the place at the other end of this trebuchet ball's short and apparently quite successful journey? Wait, before we come to that location, let's start with this one. Where in the name of Charles IV's holy trousers is this place? I want to say I've narrowed it down to a single place, but I can't really because every time I think I've found it, I turn up 3 other small fortifications in that area that look exactly the same. The guys standing outside are easy. This is obviously Markvart, this presumably Sigismund, and these guys are clearly soldiers of Prague, since this is, without question, the old heraldry of the city of Prague from around about 1360. But where the hell are they all? It's tempting to think that this is Suchdol. That location is confirmed to be at the western edge of the Kuttenberg map in KCD2, and one of the people in this image, and if you watch my KCD2 announcement video you'll know which one, met their end at the hands of a pointy thing in late 1402 at the siege of Suchdol. But even the most cursory glance at Suchdol on Google Maps reveals nothing but flat landscape as far as the eye can see, in virtually every direction you care to turn, so that doesn't seem super likely. The guys inside the fortress seem hopelessly outnumbered, but if this is really Jan Žižka, and you know anything at all about his history, it seems that outnumbered was almost the only way he knew how to fight. And we still don't really have any idea over what sort of period of time the events of Kingdom Come Deliverance are supposed to take place, so not a lot of help there. In desperation, and with no further clues, I turned to the arsonist's prayer scene at the end of the trailer. I'm probably hopelessly mistaken about this, but hear me out. Let's say the solution to being hopelessly outnumbered in this instance is to pull what 15th century soldiers almost certainly would have referred to as the Star Trek maneuver.
I am Sir Markvart von Aulitz,
saying the magic words, "Fortress, initiate self-destruct sequence."
King of Hungary and Croatia.
Authorization, Henry loves Hans, Delta 1403, or something.
Insurrection against the crown.
Then escape out of the back and let the bad guys break down the walls to find...
Get out! Get out of there! You happen to know, nobles.
Following this concrete reasoning, I figured that perhaps what I was looking for was a tiny fortress on a high rocky outcrop which had been destroyed sometime in the early 15th century. And guess what? I found one! I actually found one, not far from Trotsky Castle. Now, as a person who has to speak for a living, it is very important to me to take the time to learn to pronounce words from other languages properly. If you're only going to be pronouncing a word here or there, it doesn't take too long in the 21st century to find the correct pronunciation. But I tried for a couple of hours to pronounce this place correctly and eventually figured I was okay to let it go in this one instance after finding a video explaining that even some Czech people find it hard to pronounce this letter. So, once only, I'm gonna say Zričnina hradu Pashes, which simply means the remains of Pashes, or Stump Castle. There is mention of this little castle dating back to 1372, but surviving written records first mention ownership of it in 1403, in case that rings any bells with anyone here, and it seems as though it was destroyed at some point in the following 27 years, though no one seems to know precisely when or how, because when it is again mentioned in writing in the year 1430, it's already described as a ruin. I've looked around the area as well as I can on Google Earth and using online photos and other resources, and the landscape does seem fairly consistent with what you can see in the trailer. Okay, so it's not exactly incontrovertible evidence that this is the place. In fact, some of you might go so far as to call it the paranoid ravings of a YouTuber long past his prime and in need of a good long rest, but it's the best I've got. This video here does a pretty good job of checking out the possible areas we'll visit in KCD2 if you want to head across and check it out for yourself, but they reckon that this is Malashov. And although Malashov is confirmed as the southernmost point of the Kuttenberg map in KCD2, I think the maker of this video might be mistaken with their theory that this is Malashov Fortress, and I'm about to tell you why. Now, if the lead up to this location has seemed excessively drawn out and long-winded, it's only because, in the spirit of full disclosure, I wanted you to know how hard I worked trying to find it. I expected to have this video done long before now, and it probably would have been if not for one tiny detail. This heraldry right here took me 3 days to locate. Now, I'm grateful for the time I spent trying to find it, as I learned all kinds of things about Czech history in the process that I might otherwise have overlooked, but still, 3 days! On top of which, I'm still not 100% certain I'm correct, but I'm confident enough to hedge a lot less on this one than I have on the others. Triskelion heraldry is pretty common around Europe. If you come from my part of the world, you most likely associate it with the Isle of Man, but variations on Triskelion heraldry can be found in Sicily, in parts of Bavaria, Poland, and dozens of other places. But in Bohemia, not so much. I tried drawing connections between Bavaria and Bohemia, and there are many, but none seemed particularly realistic for this game in this time. I began wondering if Warhorse just made up a coat of arms for some place, but then figured that it featured so prominently that was unlikely, and I was on the verge of giving up when, suddenly, in 1934, 90 years before I began losing my mind looking for it, a series of frescoes was uncovered under layers of old paint in a castle in Lauf an der Pegnitz outside Nuremberg. So, okay, this castle is in Germany, but it was originally built by none other than
Charles IV, King of Bohemia and Holy Roman Emperor.
That's right, baby. The relevant point here is that these frescoes in Lauf Castle depict 114 coats of arms of the Kingdom of Bohemia, amongst which you can see Prague, Kutná Hora, Rosenberg, Waldeck, Talmberg, and then right here, a white or possibly silver triskelion with spurs, above which is a Latin inscription of a German word for a Bohemian family or place which the stonemason had likely never heard of. So there is a certain amount of hypothesizing to be done, but it doesn't seem like too much of a stretch to imagine that this refers to Malashov, a location confirmed to be in Kingdom Come Deliverance II, and at whose fortress there was a huge battle during the Hussite Wars. So we go looking for Malashov Fortress, and there you go. There are lots of depictions on the internet of what Malashov Fortress might have looked like in the 15th century, but I can't use most of them for copyright reasons, so if you want to, go and have a look for yourself. It's not difficult to find. Oh, and by the way, I'm sure this has absolutely no connection at all to what we're talking about here, but it would be remiss of me not to point out that while researching Malashov Fortress, I discovered that Czech escape room company The Chamber runs a Kingdom Come event out of Malashov Fortress, which you can see for yourself by following the link in the description below. And if you check out The Chamber's YouTube channel, you can find a video, and to save you the trouble, I've linked that as well, of a team-building exercise from 2018, which may, for those hardcore KCD fans among you, have more than one or two familiar faces in it. Is this all a coincidence? I'm sure it is, and I'm sure if I asked people at Warhorse Studios, they would all tell me I was making connections where none exist. So I'm going to let you guys go and breathe down their necks about that. I will just say that if this location turns out to be somewhere other than Malashov Fortress, I give you permission to tell me I am banned from playing Kingdom Come Deliverance ever again. I mean, I won't pay any attention, but I give you permission to tell me that if it makes you feel better. What other locations will be included, who knows? What other characters might be returning is anybody's guess. We do know that the Kuttenberg map, which will be the second map in KCD2, will be roughly the same size as the original map from KCD1 and will contain Kutna Hora to the east, Suchdol at the westernmost point, and Malashov in the south. You can find that information confirmed in this video by Vortex, which I will link in the description. Also mentioned in the same video is that the first map, the Bohemian Paradise map with Trotsky Castle, is ever so slightly smaller than the original map from KCD1. Exactly what locations within the Bohemian Paradise will be included in this map, I have no idea. Trotsky Castle we know for sure, and assuming my crazy theory about the Stump Castle turns out to be correct, we can imagine that perhaps this first map extends down from Trotsky Castle to include the town of Yichin, which was first mentioned in 1293, so it would be at least 100 years old at the same time as Henry is there. I'm going to sleep now, because it feels like if I continue, the game will have been released by the time I climb out of this rabbit hole of research and over-enthusiastic video editing I fell into about 3 weeks ago, but you can find links in the video description to the various websites, videos and images I've referenced here, so please go and check those out if you have the time. Before I go though, I need to say a thank you to Thomas on Flickr for his incredible photos of Pasha's castle. He has literally thousands of photos from all sorts of topics and locations, but of special note to KCD fans is that he has several hundred photographs of historical locations all over the Czech Republic. There's a link in the description, so go have a look. Thank you to Random Innkeeper for double-checking Google Translate wasn't dicking me around on a couple of words there. And finally, a big thank you to Roxy for her friendship and support over the last 6 years. For the first time in a long time, our channels are once again covering the same game at the same time and enjoying the support of this amazing KCD community. And consequently, she's given me a lot of shout-outs recently, so I figured I would try to return the favour. In the highly unlikely event that you are a fan of Kingdom Come Deliverance without knowing who Sexy Biscuit is, then for God's sake, go and check out her channel. But since it's far more likely you know exactly who I'm talking about, go and watch one of her videos anyway. Give her an extra like on a video you haven't watched yet. Subscribe to her channel if you haven't already, or even watch something of hers again, just to help her battle the mighty YouTube algorithm and reach 100,000 subscribers. If anyone's earned it, it's Roxy. There will be more KCD content from me in the coming weeks and months, so don't forget to like and subscribe and make sure you hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of that content. But if you can't wait that long to pick my brain, you can follow me on Twitter or Patreon or join the conversations in the Sleepless Night Discord channel. All of these links can be found in the video description or in the links section at the top of the Nights Arcade channel page. In the meantime, from Nights Arcade, this is Sleepless Night, saying nighty-night.